On for you. There you go. All right. Next order of business, approval of the agendas of all subcommittees. What is your wish? Moved by Councillor Mitchell, seconded by Councillor Musa. All those in favor? Contrary of mine, motion is carried. Next order of the business is the approval of the minutes of February 20th, 2024. What is your wish?
Second.
Moved by Councillor Musa, seconded by Deputy Warden Green. All those in favor?
Aye.
Contrary of mine, motion is carried. And we have a report, the next order, Department of Justice Committee training has been postponed until we fill the last spot on Public Members Committee. And once that is filled, I've been told then the training will then take place. So that is an update for you. I want to acknowledge, before I go any further, I want to acknowledge that Councillor McPhee did send his regrets. He's going to be a few minutes late. He'll be joining us through the proceedings. And public member Greg Dinsmore, he'll be a little bit late. He'll be joining us through the proceedings, at which time we'll administer the vote. At this time, I'm going to turn it over to our CAO, who will administer the new member oath to Nicole Cluett.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Welcome to our new member, Nicole Cluett. You have your oath of office, if you could read that now. And once you're finished reading it and it's signed, Shirley will pick it up from you. Thank you.
All right. I, Nicole Cluett of Stanley in the municipality of District of East Hants, swear that I will fully diligently and impartially execute and perform the duties required to me as a member of East Hants Police Advisory Committee. And while I continue to hold office, I will, to the best of my judgment, skill, knowledge, and ability, carry out, discharge, and perform all duties of my office faithfully, impartially, and according to the Police Act and any other act in any regulation, rule, or bylaw. I will not accept in the discharge of my duties, I will not, disclose any personal and matter of evidence brought before East Hants Police Advisory Committee. So help me God, so swear. So I swear. I so swear. Sorry. Am I signing in the wrong place? Do you want this as well?
Thank you, Nicole, and welcome to the Police Advisory Committee.
Thank you.
I'd just like to announce when Greg Dinsmore arrives, we will administer his oath during the proceedings. Next order of business, RCMP quarterly report. I'm going to turn this over to Staff Sergeant Balamacita. Good morning and welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a few updates from the last advisory committee that we had some items that were brought up to my attention. Uniac Business Park, the thefts. There was a meeting held. Sergeant Scott McRae was in attendance at that meeting with our supervisor of the day, Corporal Naima, and our newest member of the East Hants Constable, Maddie, attended. At the end of the day, there is a lot more to discuss with regards to proactive patrols, but a mechanism does exist for our supervisor of the day to direct more proactive patrols to those areas, and has happened. The off-road vehicle issue, in partnership with West Hants, RCMP, we're going to be exploring ATV enforcement patrols. The reason for the partnership with West Hants is they're the ones who have the ATVs. And they're the border between East Hants and West Hants. The trails don't necessarily follow county lines, so it makes sense to do a shared patrol with West Hants. Parking issues, kind of a moot point now that the weather's a little nicer with regards to snow removal, but I have met with bylaw enforcement Alex Andreas. We're engaged with him more frequently now, and we're exploring a partnership in not only this enforcement, but other enforcement areas. And the last one for the follow-up is Rawdon office. It's now open on Mondays. I'm going to move into the HR update. We've got 27 out of 30 positions currently occupied. 24 of those 24 of those 27 are currently roadable. In the back of the room here, we brought our new court liaison officer, Jennifer Bowden. She comes to us from the province of Nova Scotia court system, in which she was most recently a Justice of the Peace for 15, she has 15 years with the court system, but her most recent experience as a Justice of the Peace. Ultimately, the role of our CLO will be to reduce the administrative load on our members that are on the road. She'll bring consistency to the end product, which is our court disclosure, by being a more direct and efficient liaise to the Crown Court and probation parole services. She'll also be able to add some real-time updates to court-related items. For operations, I'll pass it on to Sergeant McRae.
Morning, everybody. Again, talking about operations is usually what we see out in the field with the patrols and the calls for services. And I could spend probably an hour or so just going down and breaking everything down. So I just want to give you kind of a summary. We had a lull there for about a month or so, and now with the spring, just like how people are moving towards opening up cottages and more traffic, long weekends. This last weekend, especially, we've seen quite a bit of business. So we don't see that changing with the nicer weather, but that comes with more people out and more people in behind the wheel in their vehicles, whether it's off-road vehicles, whether it's cars or business vehicles. We're still seeing cars and trucks and vehicles off the road or meeting in the same physical space, which means crashes and collisions. It's when you talk about crashes and collisions and stuff like that, which everybody sees because it puts a call for service into the provincial ambulance system, the first responder fires agencies and our resources. So it's demanding on time, and of course it wasn't in our area luckily, but everybody's seen what mess that tractor trailer caused on the 102 in Lower Sackville. Our arteries are no better. If one of them closes, it causes problems on all the rest. So we evinced when we have a yearly, I meet with my supervisors regularly, and we have what we call a road safety plan in terms of it comes out of that, our community consultative groups and what each area wants to see, and we discuss that. Road safety always seems to work its way to the top, and that means all the other stuff is not is lesser. It's just priorities, and you got to do that. So I put a lot of pressure on the corporals. They're probably starting to say my name and other choice words because they've been really put some pressure on them, because with some of the additions, like the staff sergeant talked about, the court liaison officer and other changes, I want the officers in the communities on the roads conducting those traffic stops, and out of those traffic stops and check stops, enforcement stats or occurrences will happen. So that pressure's on them. Not seeing the numbers I want to see in terms of that yet, but that's on that's one of my goals in this position, and I answer to the staff sergeant in the district to get that forward. But talking where I'm in the stores, I'm out in the community, people are saying what I like to hear. We see the police. That's good. We still get the odd place where we don't see the police enough, so that means we got to work on that. But at least I'm hearing that we're seeing them. So that pressure on the supervisors is going, and I'll use it as pressure in a positive way, not a negative terminology. Encouragement might be the better word, to continue that, to move that towards the officers. Because we have seen a trend across the province, not just in East Hants. You'll hear on the report where enforcement stats are down. And we're drilling down to see why that is. And you'll hear some news in HRM. Not that we really worry about that, but that trend's been across everywheres. I think it's the COVID, coming out of COVID, getting back, and resource pressure on the existing. All areas have been down officers, so of course the priority switches from answering the calls as opposed to doing more of the proactive stuff, which is where a lot of communities and villages and this room here like to see the officers in their community with those red and blue lights flash. So trend-wise, you're seeing like the February-April 2023 to the February-April 2024, not drastic changes. They're pretty well on par. That's showing us the same sort of business takes place. That time of year is consistent. That allows us to do a little bit of planning. Of course, we don't have that magic crystal ball or predictability favor, or if I had that power to predict the next lottery, I'd probably be retired and doing other things, right? You'll see road safety, impaired driving, it's consistent numbers. I know more if that's going on, so there's pressure on that to get out there, do the check stops with the legislation that is provided by the law, basically, in legislation. We can do more of the roadside alcohol testing, roadside testing. I want to see that. Personally here, I don't mind to say it, we don't do enough of that. I want to see more of that. And the public wants to see more of that. It's usually, if I'm not doing anything wrong, I don't mind. I like seeing our police officers doing it. It's only the people that don't want to get caught that have concerns with it. Oh, well, too bad. We're going to do more of that. Summary offense tickets, I already alluded to that, where they're down a little bit. The warnings go hand in hand. But where we're seeing, what I really like seeing is that the checkpoints are up. And I want to see that consistently more. Because that's where the checkpoints, the officers are physically out of the cars, they're meeting the members of the public coming through. Everybody in this room has driven a vehicle, has probably gone through that, and you know what I'm talking about. That puts the officers in direct contact with the public, and that's what we want. And not necessarily enforcement checkpoints, we're also encouraging what I'm calling a community checkpoint. Get out in the community so you can say hi to the people going through the thing, because we don't want to be always seen in a negative light. We want to see the positive interaction. Actually, I want to see more positive interaction. So I'm calling them community checkpoints. So that's going to be in those numbers too. So hand in hand, enforcement numbers should go up, but also hopefully seeing and meeting the officers and people getting familiar with who their officers are, because like Staff Sergeant said, we had what we call roadable. That's actually officers that are in the cars and out on the road. So, and we can see where one a good example, and we do media relations often when we have a good event. Young Constable Kraus, who's energy button, and if I had 24 of him, I don't think anybody will move around the neighborhood. But anyway, he got a guy doing 184 and 110 on the big highway. And that's what we want to point out in the picture. That's actually a handheld radar. That's not your fixed radar in the car where you're doing mobile. So that means he was out of the car doing proactive work. So that standing out and doing the thing. So we like to see that. So that's just an example of, and we all know the type of speeds that are around here, and it's a tip of the iceberg. Very general sense, and I'm sure we'll take some questions after this, but you want to go back to that, or you want to continue on with this?
Go ahead.
Yeah. The other operational update that I always like to talk about is the Provincial Street Crime Unit, which is a provincially funded positions, which we get the benefit of East Hants. We use these. These guys are doing a good job on an arrest warrant project. Brought in some of the other officers and going around some of the people that aren't showing up to court or have outstanding things, and did a little bit of that. That was successful. Same with what we call CSO compliance, or community sentence orders. When people have gotten a conditional sentence from the courts, they're no good unless people are checking up on them. You're supposed to be in your house at between whatever and doing this, and if nobody's checking on it, then it kind of defeats the point. So they've been doing more of that. That's it does take a lot of time to do some of this stuff, but the Street Crime Unit has taken it under their umbrella, utilizing the resources within the detachment and partnering with other avenues, other nearby detachments and stuff like that. So the boys are doing really good work. Of course, the type of work they can get into can be very time demanding, and one file could really take the bulk of their time. But we watch them. We have two of them in there now. both experienced, good officers and are looking, they're always proactively looking what they can do within the East Hants municipality in terms of their mandate. So it'd be more, hopefully, next time I speak to you, we'll have more of that. East Hants Resource Officer. You?
Yeah, the East Hants School Resource Officer. I'll preface it by saying that Constable Ouellette is probably statistically the most busy police officer that we have. He carries the highest file load out of any of our members out there. And the reason for that is he takes ownership over a lot of the school type of complaints. In comparison with other districts that I've worked, other detachments that I've worked, the school resource officer in this district actually takes any file that happens in the school or assists with any file that happens within a school. In other districts, this wasn't the case. If it turned into a criminal code file, it was a general duty member who did not have that familiarity with the family, with the school resources to work that file. Having said that, some of the things that he normally would do are the code blues. Those are mandated. He has to have so many of those done within every school, and he's met every expectation on those ones. And for anybody who doesn't understand code blue, that's the actual lockdown. There's different grades of events at school. Code blue is the actual lockdown where the police would be involved. He's done presentations on internet safety, safe and appropriate texting, bullying, consent, and strangers, and as well as being lost and what to do with those. The last one's more of a elementary school presentation. And the last slide, community policing. I'm happy and I'm very pleased to announce that Rawdon Detachment will be hosting an open house June 25th, 2024. It'll be about 4 o'clock in the afternoon. I realize that's a Tuesday, but it works out best for a lot of the resources that we're going to be bringing in. There's going to be some demonstration by our specialized services. Our dog handlers already promised to be there and give out and do some sort of presentations as well. If nothing else, come for the free barbecue. If there are any questions, Scott or I'd be more than happy.
Before I open it up to questions, I'm going to turn it over to the CAO to administer Greg Densmore's oath, and then if any questions are there, Greg will be a member asking questions. CAO? I'll get your mic there. I'm not used to turning my knee on.
I, Greg Densmore of East Dole, in the community, or in the municipality of District of East Hants, swear affirm that I will faithfully, diligently, and impartially execute and will, and while I continue to hold office, I will, to the best of my judgment, skill, knowledge, and ability, carry out, discharge, and perform all the duties of my office faithfully, impartially, and according to the Police Act, or any other act or any regulation, rule, or by law, and will not accept in the discharge of my duty disclosed to any person or any matter of evidence brought before the East Hants Police Advisory Committee to help me God, I so swear. I need a pen. Just 3 seconds.
Thank you, Greg, and welcome back. All right, for the new members, just so you know, if you wish to ask a question, there's buttons on the bottom of your speaker system. The one on the right, press that if you wish to ask questions, and then we can go from there. All right, now I'm going to open this up, and first up is Councillor Michael Perry.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. First of all, I'd like to welcome Nicole and Greg back to the table, and also like to welcome Jennifer. Your job is going to be very vital to helping a lot of people in the community. So thank you for accepting to come to East Hants. Through you, Chair, to the RCMP and the Staff Sergeant. Great to hear about the West Hants partnership for ATVs, because I have already been receiving calls from some people, and some of it is more or less compliance issues. There's some older machines out there making lots of noise, and it's not that they're running super late at night, but there are young families with young kids, and when vehicles are running by with no mufflers at 11:30 at night, they're waking up small children, and it seems to be happening. They were running all weekend, right? It's a May long weekend. Hopefully they'll get it out of their system, maybe get their bikes fixed and be a little bit quieter, but that's just something that I think could be well aware of. Myself and Councillor Moose also attended the business park meeting, and I think it was very constructive. And in talking to a couple of business owners afterwards, they were very happy to see the RCMP presence there, with both Scott and the other two officers there that were on patrol. So they actually saw who was there patrolling and putting the face to some of the people there. So I know that was well received by some businesses. There's a whole litany of items coming out of that, and I believe there's some more reports coming, and there'll be some more consultation between municipality on that note. One of the biggest things that have been popping up in my area, in the Pickett Lake, Coxcomb Lake, and even on Pence Lake, water safety. A lot of residents are noticing underage people as young as 8 and 9 on 300 horsepower jet skis flying around, right? So I'm guessing they don't have their boater's course, right? The machines stay on them, nobody under 16. Now, do some of these kids operate them safely and go slow? Absolutely. Are some of them a risk to themselves and others? Absolutely as well. So I know we don't have a boat, and the RCMP boat is always sitting at Whitewater Marine getting repaired, it seems, when I drive by in the mornings. But I was just wondering if there's anything on the books coming forward to branch out and do some water safety, because I would imagine the same concerns that are on those two lakes in my district apply to Grand Lake, apply back in Councillor Moose's area where I live, because I know that's true. That those are some issues as the lake areas throughout the whole municipality become more densely developed and more people are moving in. We're seeing a lot more toys at houses. I know where I lived, it used to be not, 5 or 6 people or 8 people had boats. Now it's like there's 75, 80 boats. And then everybody has jet skis and on top of that. It just seems to be younger and younger people running them. And there's been some pretty close calls. I know there's been some calls back where I live, pulling people out of the water that almost died because of this. And it's just wondering if there's any plan moving forward or any requests going forward for resources to be able to enforce things on the water, or at least have a presence to let people know.
Thanks for that, and I echo that meeting. And there was all kinds of stuff coming out, so I know there'll be more discussions, and it's nice to hear the positive feedback as well, like I alluded to before. As far as a water safety plan, there's no hard structure plan, but my brain starts reeling just hearing this, because once I transition from the same thing dealing with these off-road vehicles and what do you call them, power bikes and dirt bikes, and now transition it's no different on the water. It's just getting access to the water is a little more, you got to be a little more strategic in planning. So I'm going to take that back to the supervisors and see what they see, because some of that stuff they can get positive motivation, like find out who has some sea-doos within our organization and get them out on the water and give them motivation. So we're more likely going to have to report back on that, because there's not a plan in place right at this moment. But hearing that, and just hearing a couple of, even this long weekend, a lot of people opened the cottages, as we all know, and I've heard it not just from our area, from within my own family group. I've heard, oh, that was on, and we seen so-and-so, if so-and-so has a new one. And yeah, it's something we're going to have to take, because it's got to be a kind of a, I see it as a multiple angle or different approaches, an awareness, media type of proactive campaign with the enforcement element. So that's something we're going to have to take a thought and come back to the table with, and unless the staff sergeant has anything to add on that.
The only other thing that I can add for that.
I got you.
Yep. The only thing I can add for that is we do have trained operators within our detachment, so it is just a matter of getting the equipment and resourcing them appropriately to do those patrols. A little bit of logistics, but is possible. It's
Yeah, 'cause-
definitely possible.
Because I know last year where I live, in it's actually Councillor Moose's district, very young child with intoxicated father was almost killed. And that's, you know, that's something nobody wants to, nobody ever wants to see or hear. And I mean, that child suffered multiple injuries and his life will forever be changed. So if we can do anything to possibly avoid that in the future, you can't really avoid it, but sometimes you can kind of make people think twice before they're going to do something like that. So thank you for that. I look forward to hearing updates on that. The last thing I have is it's probably good timing, and I know you guys are always participate, but the Fireman's Fair for Mount Uniacke takes place the 21st to 22nd of June, with the parade happening on the 22nd morning. I think it would coincide great to be able to get your message out about your open house on the 25th, being a few days later, because you're going to have a couple thousand people that stretch all the way throughout the municipality that come down to attend the parade and the fair that morning. So I think it'd be a good. And traffic issues. Yeah.
We've already committed a resource to lead the parade.
Yes. So, but it'd be a great way to get the word out about your open house in Rawdon.
Absolutely.
Because that's the area where everybody would be. So it's kind of a good opportunity. Other than that, I've heard the same thing. You know, people have noticed the police more in the area, and they've noticed it more in some of the other areas as well. I have good friends in South Rawdon that have noticed the police presence coming in there a little bit more. They don't know how you guys are going to make it over the hole in the Ashdale Bridge that's still there, but that's still pending. So, anyways, anyways, that's all I have. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Nothing further. All right. Warden Rolston.
Thank you. Thank you very much for the updates. Of course, very happy that the Rawdon office is now open on Mondays again, and people do notice. You may not think they do, but they do. Thank you for setting up an open house at Rawdon. What hours? You said it is a Tuesday afternoon, which is challenging. Most parents in my community work, and they travel to the city and back. So 4 o'clock is...
Yeah, we're not set in stone on 4 o'clock, and we've earmarked 4 to 6 as the time, and we haven't done any advertising yet for it, but we thought we'd come here first with it.
I would just comment that folks in my area who work in the city are probably just getting home for supper at 5:30, 6 o'clock.
Okay.
So, you know, and then of course, well, school will be pretty well done by then, so you're not really running into the bedtime thing quite as much. But it'll be challenging. Generally, when it was done before, it was on a weekend. But I understand, you know, you have challenges with manpower availability too. So it's a start, and I'm really, you know, really hopeful that the time could be worked out. Like I said, the challenge with 4 o'clock is most parents don't have the option to take a half hour, an hour off of work and take their kids to the police station because they don't work in the community because it's such a rural area. But very happy to see that happen. I hope there's some turnout. First time in many years, who knows? And if we can get those hours to be maybe just a little more user-friendly, that would be wonderful. And I looked at my calendar and I've got nothing on there myself that evening.
See you there.
So I hope to be there. It's one of the few days that there's nothing on my calendar. So other than that, and moved pretty quickly to set that, because I've been kind of fulminating around in my mind that if we got something going for the RCMP thing, maybe we could get something in conjunction with the fire department, who are right next door there. So maybe down the road, because, kids, last open house at the police station that I attended, the kids loved to sit in the car and they loved to turn the siren on. And
I like
same
how that
thing
bright
with,
stuff.
yeah, same thing with the fire trucks and that. So I think it's good, and I certainly will do my part in trying to spread the word and hope that those who are able to make it will take advantage of it. So, thank you.
Next up would be the award.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just to echo the comments of the warden, a little more user-friendly hours would be very advantageous. I just want to comment on the Hants North area, specifically Knoll through to Kennecott. Bus times in the morning, there's a few people that come through there, no regard for buses, and no visibility of the RCMP. You know, that could just be a timing thing, a staffing thing, I'm not sure. And the word I get, they come to me and I say, well, I can bring it forward at police advisory. You should call. Doesn't do any good to call. They're 40 minutes away. The car's already gone through by then. They've gone as far as to make overlying, you know, like, we will call the cops if you don't slow down. Doesn't work. And also, I work right in the village of Kennecott. I do see the RCMP presence there occasionally. But between 10 and 2 o'clock in that village, it's a war zone. With the cars from the high school and some other ones coming through there, when they're coming through my parking lot at 30 and 40 kilometers an hour between the store and the well, getting air there, there's a problem. And it is, and it's only going to be a matter of time before I have an elderly gentleman back out of my store and gets it. And these people are well known to you people too, they tell me. Because, you know, there's other circles of young people that'll say, well, this is such and that's such, and he's traded that car in because the cops are looking for that one and now driving this one. But if there's no presence there when this happens, it's never going to stop. And the era of education is over. The era of enforcement needs to happen with some of these people because they are invincible in their own mind.
They also like to run.
It is. If they run down the station road, they're not going to get far. And
Not Station Road. Yeah.
and that's where they head.
Station.
I said there's lots of mechanisms to get them. I've worked in the past with, is it Constable Burns in Knoll? There's lots of ways we can go about this if you want to see me after this meeting, that we can have eyes there, but it has to be addressed or it's going to be bad. Like last week there was one come in, hit the brakes, missed the nurse's car, zoomed through between the well and the store, down the station road, out the station road at least 80 kilometers an hour before he piled the brakes to it by the ice cream stand. Slid out to the pavement, matted her up the hill, back down the hill. And the people that they're resigned to this because they're 40 minutes away. If you call them, it's all done. And if you set up a checkpoint to try to get them, everybody knows about that in 45 seconds. That's all over Facebook. Don't go there. Leave your car home. Oh, they're gone now. You're good to go. And as soon as you fellas leave the area, we're right back at it again. So I said I was young once, ripped around as much as anybody and spun cars around, but I didn't do stuff like that in parking lots where it endangered people. And I know the public member Densmore will attest to everything I've just said. No, it will, 100%. Those are my comments for now.
Next up, Councilman Norfolk.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just some questions on the report. Impairment, do you see much difference between drug and alcohol impairment?
We're still seeing heavily on the alcohol. We do have DREs, and we have had charges under the impaired by drug sections. I would say right now it's about 20% drug and 80% alcohol. Is there more of that going on, just like Councillor Green said, and we got to hear about it and direct calls to me? I would encourage the councillors, because when I alluded to in my little preamble about road safety plan, putting the pressure on the supervisors to get the pressure on the members, that's exactly what I'm talking about. Staying in those communities, listening to what's going on. Run-throughs are good. Checkpoints are more of that visibility thing at times as opposed, but we do want to see the enforcement numbers up. And by more visibility, we should have enforcement numbers up There is more challenges with rural policing, 100%. It doesn't take a rocket science to know if a police car drives through your community, you're probably not going to see another one for a little bit. So that's a challenge. So, but I encourage any district or the councillors, give me a direct call. I'm an open-minded. We might get in a longer conversation than we both planned, but that's okay. Communication allows us to do things. But 2080, I would say, Councilor Mitchell.
Roadside checks, when you do the breath sample, are the percentages the same for drug and alcohol?
Yeah, well, no, most of the roadside checks are going to be alcohol. It's a different screening process for that. I have no bones about it. I think our roadside check numbers are abysmal. It's a place where I'm putting focus on because we even actually have more authority now to conduct them. You can do it. Halifax had a program where every traffic stop you're getting roadside tested. They made it public. I don't know what's coming out of that. I haven't checked in to see if there's success or no success. I still kind of like to, most people don't mind following the letter of the law with the officer's thing. I'd still like to have, let's do it. But we need more of them. But the division for the roadside is probably going to yield more alcohol than drugs. The drugs are going to be visual observations and physical stuff. Hopefully, again, with the pressure putting more officers out in the community's visibility, those numbers should go up. That's not it's a positive thing that impaired numbers go up, but it's not a positive thing because it means there's more of it still going on. But hopefully that answers your question.
And the last is just basically just some information. The Equity and Community Wellbeing Committee, we met last Thursday and we had a presentation from the Heartline people on housing and human trafficking. And one of the comments at near the end of the presentation with the highest per capita ratio in Canada is in Nova Scotia. Are you seeing any of that out this way?
We're aware of it. We work regularly with the provincial unit that follows that closely. And we put any files that we have the suspicion of that within our district, they'll do a review on it. I'm not seeing it. I have my suspicion of maybe 1 or 2 cases where I review every operational file. It's not panning out to be that, which that's a good thing, but we're watching it. We're not seeing numbers yet. Do I believe stuff's going around and East Hants is no different than the rest of the province or rest of Canada? Absolutely. But most of our officers, if not all of them, are very aware or cognitive to watch out for that when they have, especially a runaway file with young females. We have a few repeat calls for services or multiple calls for services in relation to a few individuals in the community. We've definitely done that review to see if there's an element of that, because we wouldn't be doing our due diligence if not. We're not seeing it, but hopefully it doesn't change.
Just to finish, I asked the presenters, Janine and James, if I could forward that presentation off to you people, to the RCMP. Sure. If you're interested, I will forward that. I have it on my laptop.
Yeah.
So you can see and know what I know.
Sure, absolutely.
Okay. Thank you. That's all, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Next up, public member McDermott.
Across the HRM in the last 3 weeks, there's been a rash of bomb threats at middle school and high schools. And it's getting to a point where it's impacting availability of resources. Do you have is it on your radar? Do you have a plan to address it proactively?
Our school liaison or school resource officer and community policing officer have done that, and they do these when they do their code blues and all these other talks with the principals. That's always discussed because, as you stated in HRM, when we get a not almost all of them are false calls, but they tie up heavily resources. They take the kids out of school, and the school and the police have a procedure how to react to it. So proactively, I did 4 years of media relations, and we dealt with back in this was years ago, but we had that same thing in HRM element of our CMP, and we actually had a negative response from our proactive campaign. We put the messaging out, don't do this, and guess what we did? We put up bomb threat complaints to the school up by about 200%. So that's the risk reward on sometimes being proactive. Is it worth consultation and continue communication with the schools? Yes. Reactor, I'm still owed on how proactive we do on that, because I had that previous experience, but I'm a news hound, so I watch all the other areas of news, and I see, oh, here's another bomb threat here. I'm going to jinx myself when I say this. It hasn't been an issue in our schools, and I say that, and I'll go out the door today. I'm hoping that's just being Scotty, but yeah. So I'm weighing that out, and I don't know. We'll probably go back. That's why we make notes. We discuss things we hear here. Some good ideas come out of these meetings. Oh yeah, we got to do that, do this. We'll probably have a discussion around that, and I'd probably have to report back.
Anything further? Thank you. Next up is Council Secretary for
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a couple of comments. As far as the stunting charge that was laid back in April, you know, we talk about that social media can have a negative impact when you're trying to, you know, make things happen, but this is a positive one. You know, I think that's really impactful that first of all, it happens and then it gets out there. Councillor, Deputy Warden Green was talking about, you know, young people. That sounds like kind of a bit of terrorizing going on when people are, you know, when there's danger involved and whatnot. But to have, you know, something happen there that resulted in a post like this, or it resulted in people knowing that someone was, you know, caught or charged, or it's really impactful. So I really like to see that. Secondly, having the court liaison officer, Jennifer Bowden, come on board. 4 years ago, I think it was, or 3 years ago, we talked about our vision 4 years down the road and how we wanted to have the 24-hour policing and what that would look like. And having a position like this come to fruition is really showing us that what we planned is actually coming forward. And so we appreciate you and your experience coming on board. And finally, talking about the school liaison. You know, working in an elementary school for almost 20 years, or at the higher level for a few years as well, it's not just perfunctory tasks that they are performing. And, you know, when you hear about the bomb threats, for some students, hearing that and finding out that they got off school early is literally for their mentality is, oh, okay, so if someone calls that in at our school, are we going to get off early? Which sounds so trivial, right? But in a high school student's mind, it can be as simple as that. So trying to figure out how to deal with that is a very, very difficult task. But I will say, as far as the code blues and whatnot, I have experienced several code blues for real at an elementary school, you know, with stressors on people in 2024 and before then as well. Things happen, you know, domestic or family things happen, and code blues are very real. And to practice those with students and staff, it's imperative. So yeah, liaisons for schools are performing a very important task in our schools. So just wanted to touch on those topics. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Next up, Councillor Don.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to staff. Mine's a question more than anything. Do you know how the young fellow survived on the weekend? Did he, on the four-wheeler it was about 2 in the morning, I think, 1 to 2. I'm just curious if he made it through or not. He hit.
I think that that's probably not an appropriate question.
Do you get any report on that accident?
I think that's probably under investigation. We shouldn't be giving that.
It's an investigation?
It's still an open investigation. We have no problem saying that.
Okay. The other thing was I had a vehicle in the backwoods road. I don't like vehicles back because they're fire season and that, but I did get rid of it. So I just wanted to comment to you, but so it's off the books. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Next up, City Council, we have that public member.
That's me, over here. Just what Wayne was saying, dealing with Daisy to school. I drive a school bus in the mornings. Now, I've had cars pass me on double solid lines. I've had two pass me with my red lights on, and both almost clipped the kids. Now, one, granted, you fellas did get him, but that same truck goes every day. It's got a rejection sticker on that truck. It is not hard to pick out because it's white, red, and blue. So it sticks out like a sore thumb. And they come out of the school, they're going sideways up there at the same time. It's just, then they're beyond foolish, right? Now, when I first moved out there, we used to call it Mountie Tuesday, because they said the Mounties would show up on Tuesday, and after that, it was good for the rest of the week. Thank God that's gone away. But the same thing that Wayne says, you're looking at a 35 to 40-minute response time. And I can say that because I had to call you fellas Saturday night because a car was looking for the campground and found my driveway and then off the side of the driveway into a 4-foot ditch. And when I called, the corporal called back, he was good. Can't get any complaints about him, but he said, I'm just leaving infield. And I understand with the new zoning, or the guys set up, is that I'm on the infield side, which puts me at the far most northwest corner of that zone, which basically we see you, but rarely. Right? And that campground was hopping, and this lady was, well, I'm a DRE. I'm a trained DRE. She was stoned. She didn't know where she was. She thought she was actually at the campground, and actually she was in my driveway 3/4 of a mile away. Right? It's and the weekend before, both sides of the road was lined because people wanted to watch the Northern Lights at from 1:30 to 3 o'clock in the morning, and not a car through there. Right? And yelling, screaming, hollering, horns going and blaring, and that was right from my place down to probably past the campground, and then when you go Burncoat, they were all through Burncoat, and it was just both sides, cars lined. I know you're probably looking, because I remember some last one, you could have a maximum of probably 5 people working at any one time, and knowing policing, you're very lucky if you do have that. You're running probably 3 out of the 5. If you're lucky, 4, right? And our area compared to this area in here, we're 2, when you go up here's probably 7 when it comes to the amount of people, right? So it's just the idea of having people out there, because like Wayne said, they're at dinner time and at school at 2 o'clock. It's just a racetrack out there. So it would be nice to see us a little more. And I know staffing has that issue. But like I said, while watching that 6-year-old almost get clipped, and then a 4-year-old and a 7-year-old almost get clipped. And there's nothing really you can do about it. When they're going by those school buses, they don't care. One guy laughed.
No. It's a challenge. Community is your best police. I've heard that. This is the statement, and the more we hear about it, it's also not so much resourcing place. If you had 25 officers, then you do more things. But it's also changed mentality in the calls of service, and with the 24-hour policing and the zone, or let's call it zone or whatever, we're really trying to get that. We're in the process, and that's the staff's job and my job, to change the mentality of the style of zone policing, where traditionally, let's stay where the bulk of the population is, and nothing happens in a community somewhere else, and we'll go when we have to. So that's a challenge in any agency to change that, and I think we're doing good, because we want to reduce, like Councillor Green and yourself, like 40-minute response time. I don't want to hear 40-minute response times. especially for higher maybe if it's a check suspicious thing, that's different, but if it's a priority call, that's not good enough. And we talked about that with the business districts and having officers and the supervisor buy-in, which is my job to really, policing has come to a point nowadays where it's not just wait for the phone to ring, it's to plan your resourcing, plan your membership. I got 5 resources today. Okay, 2 of you are in zone this or whatever. We have a community event that there's going to be 1,000 people watching the lights. Well, there should be an officer down there. So there's an education into our supervisory officers now that they got to learn that you're managing a shift and you have to be able to do that. So do I have that full wish list yet? I think I'm almost there. I got 4 good supervisors that are starting to get the messaging down to the next rung. And we're seeing some of that with the visibility, the checkpoints and stuff like that. Is there work to do? Absolutely. Are we going to be everywhere to everybody at any time they want? I don't think that will ever be that. But to get that messaging, it's the same as doing proactive messaging versus reactive messaging. There's pros and cons of that. It works well on certain crime stats. It doesn't work well on other crime stats. But you don't try? No, we try. Same as this, like I'm hearing from you today, I'm hearing from everybody else. I make those notes. I'm going to push that agenda again. Look, I'm hearing from all districts. All districts need to see us. Okay, but we need that communication of other events going on. I guess that's more proactive events, but the bus thing, we have charged several, actually, there's way more charges for people passing school buses that there shouldn't be one, but we have some enforcements on that. Do I think it happens more than the amount of people getting charged? 100%.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, same person, same time. I've been in, the detachment for that, and I've got a person doing something, same offense 3 times. They don't care. So change in mentality within that is a challenge too, right? But we still try. Well, we still try. But I need to hear about this, and I welcome these meetings. But I like the secondary every other day meetings when you see me out in the community or drop in at the detachment. Let me know. I'm going to push this stuff. Like, well, we go back again. I'm going to go back. He makes notes. I make notes, and we take that. And I want the supervisors to come up with a patrol plan that includes some of that stuff. We can't cover everything, but we can try. And again, resourcing does become a challenge, but it can't totally be an excuse all the time either, right? So, yeah.
I'm not knocking the corporal.
Yeah.
He was good there
Yeah.
Saturday night. He was there, I think, within a half hour, but he says, I'm coming from infield, right? So now, and doing supervisory part of it, he's watching everybody else's that he's doing for that night. Plus, he's got his own paperwork to do. Plus, he's got to read all their files for the night. I'm not knocking him in any way, shape, or
No,
form.
and I'm not taking it that way.
But that is just sort of the same thing, is we're running into the fact that, and a lot of people out home won't call you for the mere fact is
Don't like
it's
that.
40 minutes. Because you get a call back and, well, we're just leaving Enfield, or we're just leaving Elmsdale, right? And which is because this is the main population area, right? So, and I think you got to get back to the community, like you said, to get them to come back and call you. Because I'll tell you, he was the first positive, how to word it, first positive time I met with the RCMP, and all the times I've called and complained, I was actually told to fly the hell up my driveway one day by a member. We'd be up to see you, and never showed up. Right? So it's, and in that particular call, there was 4 people said they'd never call you again. Right? But they said the guy last week, he was great.
Good. That's good to hear.
Right? But it's just the negative reaction that people get. People don't know you. People see you drive through. And I know Wayne has offered, we have a breakfast every third week of third weekend every month. Have the fellows drop in for the breakfast or stuff like that. to get to see the people, get to know the people, because there's 170, anywhere between 120, 170 people show up for that breakfast. On those Sundays.
That's exactly what I want to hear. We want them too. We're on board, which is trustly.
So, but the thing is, and I know very well that person was from the campground on the weekend, and I know there's a negative thing between the campground and the RCMP. Well, the owner of that campground is from Harrietsfield. If you know Spryfield, Harrietsfield area, they don't like police. So.
No, appreciate it. Appreciate the comments.
No, that's fine.
Next up, Councilor Lucia.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I know we talk a lot about buses and people passing the school bus. So I'm not going to tell you how to do your job, but in my opinions, you have, I live on Highway 1, and around 6 a.m. to 8 a.m., it's very mad out there. Between 8 and 4, it's ghost town except the business park. So I've heard about 2 instances of passing school bus already on Highway 1. So if we don't have any presence in the morning there, like in the rush hours when people are wake up late and they're late to work and they'll do anything to go to work, even if they try to kill somebody or pass a school bus or something. But those people should be hurt, losing their licenses, losing money, and caught. Like, you cannot, and on Facebook, you see everything. And if somebody see that, oh, there was an instance passing school bus and nothing done, no police, why don't I do it next day? So I think policing in the rural area is different than corridor areas and stuff, and the rush hours are between 4 and 6, like supper hours, and early in the morning, people going to work in Halifax and coming back. So other than that, I can't say anything about it. But Highway 1 is very bad, and sometimes East Union. Thank you.
Next up,
Thank you. Love to see you gentlemen making all these notes. Once upon a time, I was a note taker, but not so much anymore. I just, hearing all the conversation and certainly school bus and transport of students is a safety concern. And my mind goes back, and I understand that this new way of doing things, since we've gone to the 24-hour with the zoning, and that is still, I guess, kind of a work in progress type thing. But I would just make the comment that I was on the council of the day when we established the detachment in Rawdon. And I think I have said before that that involved a lot of negotiation with Department of Justice and whatnot to get that located there. And I give kudos to this guy next to me for driving some of that, because we were told that they weren't going to put it there. And we didn't accept that. We went back and explained why, and they came around to our way of thinking. And the words that the lady used was, this is about communities, and this is about community safety. So I don't know what the answer is. I don't have the training that you folks do. But I'm really, really hoping that that detachment becomes a central part of this again, because I know that the vision at that time was that the Rawdon detachment would cover much of the rural area. Like I said, your way you're trying to set things up is a work in progress, and I'm sure there'll be monitors and changes and things, but I understand what the other folks are seeing. I mean, I live off of Highway 14 on a dirt road, so I don't get a lot of fast traffic on my road. The odd ATV, and it's not even a lot of those anymore. But I do get, in the middle of the night, I do get off-road vehicles of some type going in with very, no mufflers, I assume, going back the road in through the woods and that, but not often. I live in the country, so. But, yeah, I'm just very, very interested to follow, and I'm sure we'll, hopefully can figure something out. But I do think that rod and detachment, in my mind, is still key, and I just really hope it's still a key part of the operation. And the other final little question I had, I'm really glad to see this lady come on board to help relieve some of the paperwork burden. And there were, I believe, 2 other positions that we were going to fund. One, okay. And so I'm assuming we're still working on getting that staffed up. And I don't know what's happened. It just seems like every business and every entity everywhere is having a hard time finding trained and good staff to work for them. So hopefully we'll get that spot filled, and it'll make a difference. But I do hear what these folks are saying, and my mind goes back to the many years when I was a high school student, and the idea of a bomb threat in a high school was just beyond something we would ever have thought of. I mean, the most badass thing that ever happened was that somebody pulled the fire alarm, and you got a little bit of time off class and got to go line up outside, and that's serious enough. But times have certainly changed, and I don't envy you your jobs, but I'm happy to see the notes being taken, and I'm sure that whatever can be done to try and make the roads safer for transport of the students to and from school and in the villages where the schools are is taken seriously, and we'll do what we can. Thank you.
At this time, I'll turn the chair over to yourself. Listen to the conversation today and listen to your report. I'm impressed with your report. You're getting the message that I've always put across, that we need to touch base with as many people as we can in the community to not so much to become friends, and just be aware that the police are not your enemy out there. And let's face it, with the amount of policing system we have, we will not be everywhere at all times. But I guess it's up to us, I feel, even though, yes, it may be 20 minutes or 40 minutes down the road that, an officer will arrive. We have to change the public perception that the RCMP have to know about the complaints in the area. That will bring an awareness to the RCMP so they can start to concentrate in those areas. So that's our job to try to, and your job as well, to try to get these public to call in. I have no problem calling in, whether they're going to be 20 or 40 minutes late, because I think information is so key in this. But what I've heard during the conversation is that when we were introduced to zone policing here not too long ago, and we were going from one side, I think it was myself that asked the question, or I'm pretty sure it was me, that if a call came from a different zone, the closest police officer would be attending, and I was assured of that. And do I still, I guess my question to you, do I still have that same assurance that the closest people are going to respond to a call? I know it's probably prioritized, but when I hear it's got to come from all the way from infield down to Knoll Shore, wasn't that officer on the other side closer? So I guess that's my concern. Can I be assured that the closest possible officer will be responding?
You're correct. And the mechanism that's in place for that is the shift supervisor. So the shift supervisor, through different mechanisms that we have, and we have one system where they can track the exact location of a vehicle. If a response time is outrageously long, or somebody seems like they're coming from a long ways away, we expect that person to open up a system that we call ATAC, Blue Force Tracking, where they can literally track not the car, but the person who's holding it, tracks their phone, right? The supervisor's mechanism is to identify that person and have them attend. That's the mechanism, if they're available, right? So I can assure you that's the premise behind zone policing, was to make sure that when all else is equal and there are no calls for service anywhere, that the closest car will respond. And when all else is equal, the premise behind zone policing is that somebody will be floating around in those zones, which should essentially make those calls for service, the response time quicker for those calls for service.
I thank you for that. I just had to make sure that was still in place and still the case, and there
Yeah.
was no changes made within that, because, when I hear 40-minute response time from Enfield there, that raises a question in my mind.
It's got big notes in my notebook too.
Good. Thank you very much. All right, next up, Deputy Warden Green. Just hold on. There you go.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just for a little bit of context on the 45-minute wait, if volunteer fire service is on that scene, and you are well versed in yourselves as knowing what it's like to deal with drug or intoxicated people, you can imagine the pressure it puts on that fire department to try to deal with these people, family members, friends, acquaintances who show up there, maybe 20 of them, and you're there with 6 guys. And, we get word from dispatch, we'll try to hold them there, try to hold them there. Doesn't happen. We can't do that. It is. So that's just a little context for the rest of council. And like Councillor Mitchell, he doesn't have those problems with his fire department. He's usually 10 minutes. So it is. But out there, if we're on the road between Knoll and Walton somewhere on the side of the road with a carload of drunks, it's pretty hard to contain them. It is, and I'm not going to put my guys in physical danger to try to hold them for you. That's not our job. It's not part of our deal. So just a little context for the rest of council is that's what happens a lot of times on the side of the road. And it is, and dispatch you'll say, well, they're 22 minutes out. Well, in that 22 minutes, they can have 22 friends there. Like we've come across them before, they've had the chain hooked on to pull one out of the ditch when we landed, and they just didn't recognize the lights, knew they weren't, thought they was the cops, and they left. So,
Yeah.
anyway, that's what we're up against. That's all. Thank you.
All right, seeing no one else left to speak, I guess there's no further questions. I would like to thank everyone for coming today, and I'm sure the staff sergeant and Sergeant McCrae will be going away and going over these notes and trying to put in some kind of system that will deal with a lot of these, what they've heard here today. So I thank you, everyone, for coming. And at this time, I will entertain a motion for adjournment. Oh, I almost got adjourned. Warden Rose.
Just a very quick question. Once the time is set for the open house and the barbecue and that, if someone could shoot me off an email or give me a call, I will be away a fair bit over the next month, but an email I'll always get. Be great, and then I can try and noise it around and share it around the community too. It'd be much appreciated. Thank you.
Certainly.
All right, at this time, I'll try it again for a motion for adjournment. Moved by Councillor Mitchell, seconded by Councillor Garden Cole. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion's carried. We'll be now entering corporate and residential services with Councillor Perry as chair. Thank you.
This is great.
All right, everybody. We're a little bit behind, but we're going to catch up, hopefully. So I'd like to call to order the Corporate Residential Services Committee. Looking for the approval of the minutes, April 16th, 2024. Moved and seconded. All those in favor? All right, we're going with new employee introductions. Who's taking this one on? Yourself, CAO? Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So pleased to announce that the Sportsplex staff have all officially transitioned to the municipality as of May 15th last week. We had a gathering with them on that day, and everybody seems pretty excited to be on board and looking forward to what the future holds for that facility. So we welcome all of the Sportsplex staff to the municipal staff team. 3 new employees to recognize today. One is Joanna Phillips. Joanna is our new aquatics supervisor, aquatic coordinator. Joanna has been working at the Rath Eastlink Community Center in aquatics and programming. She is highly decorated with the ability to certify folks and has all the advanced certifications for aquatics. So a huge win for the team as we start to look to open the aquatic center back up again. Joanna will be really spearheading that whole thing for us, along with Scott Preston, who is also, Scott's also working at the Sportsplex, so Joanna will have this, the lead on that. Joining her at the Aquatic Center, we actually have a new employee who starts today, but she's not new to the municipality. So Abby Hocko has been with us since 2017 in the aquatics field, and we're very excited that she has come on board after graduating from Acadia this past now in May. She's graduated from Acadia, and she's coming on board to fill Brittany's maternity leave as the aquatic supervisor. So that position will also be key in staffing up the aquatic center again, getting ready for our opening in early summer. So really excited to have these 2 staff on board, and I think it's just exciting. It's an exciting time, and we hope that they join our team, and I know that they're going to make a huge impact. Another new employee that we have is Hazen Hutchinson. Hazen will be joining the Solid Waste Division as a heavy equipment operator. He started last week, May 15th. He comes with a lot of great experience, and he's actually worked with the Regroup on their commercial side of the operation, so understands the business of the Waste Management Center. So we're very excited to welcome Hazen to the team, and we'll hope he has a long and prosperous career with East Hants. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, CAO. Councillor Garden-Cole.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a comment. It's great when people come from away and see the value of coming to work in East Hants. It's also great to see the Abby Hockos who have come up through here and join the team as a local person. So either way, it's great, but it's a bit heartwarming to have a local person come on board. Thank you.
Thank you. Absolutely. There will be no employee recognitions today. They'll be held later on in July. So first presentation, we're going to have Director of Finance is going to give us the Sustainable Growth Fund allocations. Go ahead, Wade.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So today we're going to talk about the Sustainable Services Growth Fund. If you recall, this is money that we got back in March of 2023 from the province. Had very specific requisites for us to apply to certain jobs, and it had to actually be completely done by March 31, 2025. In July of 2023, the council approved a list of those projects we're going to apply those funds to, and so we did that report. However, in January of '24, we came back to council and made a revision to that list, switching to from one of the lift stations to another one because there was a delay in the industrial park lift station, so we put it to the medical. And again, here in March, we received notice from the province that they were going to provide us lots of additional funding in the form of $8.66 million in the Municipal Capital Growth Program. A significant chunk of that would be going to one of the lift stations, the medical center lift station that we had identified previously. So that, and we also had some feedback from recently from the department on our list. So we've redid the list again, and this is what we have on there now for projects. We've put this in front of the department as well, and they've indicated that they're happy and accept these projects as meeting the requirements of the Sustainable Services Growth Fund. So I believe that this, and believe and hope, that this is the last time we'll come forward to council in relation to this funding. And this project will be done on, these projects will be done on time. And what we're looking for today is this recommendation that's on the report so that we can move forward and advise the province and get these projects done and get the funding, or apply the funding. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Wade. First up, Council Mitchell.
Just a quick question on the report. The original allocation was for the waste management loader of 149,000, and it's going to 286. I'm just curious what the difference was.
So we, when we had originally done a longer list, we had allocated to a variety of individual items. But when the province gave us this feedback about what was eligible and what wasn't eligible, we decided that we could in fact apply all of the funding to the loader, and it was great because it was actually done and complete, so we wouldn't have to face any delays from the perspective of not meeting the March 31st, 2025 deadline. So I thought it was a good way to apply those funds.
Thank you. Based on that, I'll move the recommended motion as presented on screen.
Moved and seconded. We have two people on to speak before that. First up, Councillor Musa.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Probably that question is not for Wade, but maybe for Jesse or someone. Was there any study done for like sewer and water in Mount Uniacke, like anywhere in recent years or right here?
Through Mr. Chair, there isn't a study's been talked about, but it has not been planned as of yet with respect to water and sewer potential future infrastructure in the Uniacke area. But there, I would suggest that is an opportunity to us really flush out that in the next iteration of the strategic plan to see it as a strategic focus. I think that's where it fits in the discussion. We'll ramp that up with the new council post-fall election, new version of council, and it would be in subsequent years, not this current fiscal. And so to spend money on the allocation of this, that's where we're planning.
No, this like the 8.6 million triggered my answer, because my question, because if we ever gonna do sewer and water in Mount Uniacke, now is the time, because the federal are pushing for it, the province are pushing for it. They need homes, they need houses, they need everything. So I think we're due, because we're the only community alongside Highway 1 that doesn't have any sewer and water. Like,
Is that it, Councillor Musa?
thank you.
Thank you. Next up, Councillor Rhino.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, when I read this, when I went over this, waste management loader, how do we my question was to myself, how do we tie that back to substantial growth? And I guess, with a lot of wording and probably can, but that just kind of jumped out at me. But I guess in the bigger picture, I'm not knocking these gifts from the province to the federal government. But I wish there was some way that all areas of the municipality could benefit. Because when we look at these projects, the majority of these, if not all of them, are in this corridor area along that 102, right? How can we get some money switched down into the Mount Uniacke area, into the rural area, right? There's gotta be something there that we can disperse this money more evenly or more equitably owed along, because we would like to encourage growth in the Hants North area. And as Mount Uniacke does, they would like to have and build upon what they have. I know it's about projects and what we have, and I know there's growth in this area, and I'm not knocking that. Money, gifts from the province are appreciated, but I would like to try to work toward somewhere, somehow, that we can create projects that will benefit the entire municipality, not just one concentrated area. Thank you.
Is that all, Councilor Arno?
Thank you.
Yeah, and just like the Waste Management Center stuff does benefit everybody, but I understand what you're saying, and I believe that to go, like for Councilor Moose's question, anything that is to go out in the rural and Mount Uniacke areas requires future planning, which would require future motions. Director of Infrastructure, go ahead.
Through you, Mr. Chair, just wanted to comment on the strategy of putting the loader on the docket. One, it was a capital spend. It's spent within the time frame. It makes a clean application. The tide to growth was based on us keeping our last loader because of the volume increases at the Waste Management Center. And just kind of supplemental example, we're averaging over 40 more trips per Saturday from residents every Saturday from 2 years ago. Not 5 years ago, 2 years ago. So the growth and the impacts of the Waste Management Center, I wouldn't discount that. It's real. There's a lot of activity on that site. The site's becoming more and more strategic and important for the municipality. So I just wanted to flag that. And that's how we're writing that into the application, and that's the wording and the premise of how we'll get those funds through that application.
Yeah, go ahead, Councilor.
Thank you. Yeah, I appreciate that, Jesse. But, toward the chair's, speaking there, I guess my point is, we're getting a loader, yeah, we're getting a loader that's gonna benefit everybody. But I just don't want the rural area to be known for the garbage disposal for the rest of, only for the garbage disposal for the rest of East Hants. This is my point. Let's try to create something where that money can be used throughout and not concentrated in one area, as I said before. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor. Okay, we have a motion on the floor. What's your wish? Question's been called on the motion. We'll go to the vote. And the motion's passed unanimously. Wayne was gone for those things. So next up, we're going to have the donation fund acceptance of donation policy, RBC grant, and East Hants Youth Links. Continuing on with the Director of Finance. Go ahead, Wade.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So this report is in relation to an opportunity we have as a municipality to assist a local nonprofit organization, the East Hants Youth Links organization, which is well known to the municipality, and we have quite a bit of dealings with in Parks and Recreation. We've been contacted by RBC and this organization in relation to this $1,500 donation, and we as an organization do have a policy on acceptance of donations. And in that report, there's several sections which I've kind of highlighted in the report, and I'll just briefly mention to them. Section 1.1, donations must be for purposes consistent with the municipality's mandate. Section 3.3, council may establish donations fund the collection and use of donations. Section 3.3, donations of cash designated for specific only be accepted by the municipality where council is authorized specific purpose of fundraising campaign. Section 3.4, contributions from a donation fund is considered a grant, will be reported as such. And then Section 4.1, which I want to talk about a little bit more, the municipality cannot facilitate a conduit relationship between donors and organizations which is independent of the municipality. This means that the municipality's authority to issue tax receipts cannot be used to provide an unrelated organization with the ability to provide contributors with a tax benefit. So to that point, one might say, look at that and say, well, therefore we can't do this. However, point you to specific wording in the paragraph, unrelated organization. And read this paragraph here. East Hants Youth Links has had a close working relationship with the municipality for several years. It is also one of the few nonprofit organizations which benefits from an annual community partnership fund grant from the municipality. It is an important part of the municipality's strategic plan, key strategies of strong community. East Hants will continue to meet with and review annual reports and programs of East Hants Youth Links and would direct these dollars in keeping with the strategic plan. So I would say that that paragraph is meant to address Section 4.1. And at the bottom of this report, I would like to also point out that it should be noted that the municipality a few years ago actually did a similar transaction, if you will, with RBC to another local nonprofit organization. It was the Enfield-Elmsdale Lions Den Playground, and that has been going on for several years and continues to go on every year since then. And that is my that is my report, Mr. Chair. And if council is so willing, the recommended motion is here.
What is your will, council? Councilor Green.
I would move the recommended motion.
Moved and seconded. Is there any further discussion? Question's been called on the motion. And the motion's passed unanimously. So this brings us to our time of break. So we will break now and reconvene at 10:45. All those in favor? Aye. We are on break. good to go? All right. Back from break. So the first up, we're going to have a presentation on the asset management program with an update. And I believe Jillian's taking this. Welcome, Jillian. Go right ahead.
Thank you. All right. Through the chair, I'm happy to share with you an update on East Hants Asset Management Program. In 2022, East Hants kicked off its formal corporate asset management program. So this is an informational report to provide council with an update on the accomplishments made to date since council's approval of the asset management policy in November 2022, and also to provide some details on the next steps for the program. Simply put, asset management, or AM, is how we plan for and manage our assets. It's not a one-time project, but rather a long-term incremental culture change with a focus on making the best possible decisions regarding the construction, operation, maintenance, renewal, and disposal of assets. And before the introduction of a formal corporate asset management program, East Hants municipal assets have been planned for and managed at more of a departmental level, and using a variety of data management practices and approaches. And historically, staff have been doing a great job at this and have been well-equipped and well-informed to make decisions and recommendations about municipal assets. But as existing infrastructure begins to age and we are taking on new assets at a higher rate through new developments, formal practices are becoming more of an undertaking and a centralized program is becoming more important. The sustainable infrastructure section of the strategic plan includes a key objective to establish a corporate asset management program that effectively manages municipal assets and plans for the long-term funding of infrastructure needs for the community. In November 2022, Council approved the asset management policy, which provided a commitment to asset management best practices across East Hants, and it authorized the CAO to manage a corporate asset management program. And that asset management policy is a public document that's available on the East Hants website. As a result of the policy, the asset management strategy and roadmap were developed by staff. So both of these are currently internal documents. The strategy was designed to establish the foundation for the municipality's program and detail the key principles, practices, and approaches that staff will adopt to plan for and manage municipal assets. The strategy includes a program scope, a governance structure, and it also outlines some short, medium, and long-term goals for the program. The roadmap, on the other hand, is more of a step-by-step action plan that staff are using for how to implement asset management across the organization and meet the goals of the policy and the strategy. So the roadmap is a living document, and that'll change as goals are met or priorities shift. So after council approved the asset management policy, the CAO formed the Asset Management Committee, which is known internally as the AM Committee. And it's a staff committee that's consisting of primarily senior leadership that will drive and promote asset management to their respective departments and the organization as a whole. So the committee consists of the manager of real estate and corporate projects and the director of corporate services as the co-chairs. And then other members include the directors of infrastructure and operations, finance, parks, rec and culture, and planning and development. The Asset Management Office is positioned in the Corporate Services Department, and it serves as the main source of technical and operational support for day-to-day asset management activities across the organization. And the Asset Coordinator is the main internal contact for that support. There are some other staff members in the organization, such as the Geomatics Coordinator, that play large roles in supporting the program as well. And so under the guidance of the committee, execution of a successful asset management program will require a strong collaboration between the AM office and program support and the operational staff who are subject matter experts on the assets. The asset management program commenced with the guidance of a consultant team, Dillon Consulting and DCA Consulting, who were retained in June 2022 prior to the hiring of the full-time asset coordinator. So the consultant team worked with the AM committee and other staff across the organization to help implement and introduce industry-recognized asset management practices and principles to the organization, and their contract ended just in December 2023. The consultant team helped facilitate the Roads pilot project, which commenced as an immersive way to introduce asset management concepts and practices into an existing municipal operation. So the project focused on the assets that contribute to the services of East Hants Roads and Engineering team. So specifically looked at were municipally owned roads, sidewalks, streetlights, catch basins, and culverts. The project involved the creation of centralized asset inventories for these types of assets, including the development of a unique ID system that can be applied to other municipal assets going forward, and also compiling critical attribute information where known, such as age, size, and material of assets. And additionally, throughout the course of the contract with our consultant team, they hosted a series of workshops with the AM committee and road staff to introduce new concepts about how to leverage the inventories to set goals, answer questions, and plan for the future. As a result of that roads pilot project, a first asset management plan for roads assets was developed and provided to staff by the consultant team at the conclusion of their contract. So that asset management plan is a point-in-time plan that outlines the state of the existing inventory of assets covered in the scope. It includes information from the consultant-led workshops about things like risk, life cycle planning, and service delivery considerations. And the plan also includes recommendations from the consultant team on ways that East Hants can improve and move forward. Staff also received inventories in GIS and Excel formats from the roads pilot project, which are working data sets that are intended to be regularly updated and maintained by staff. So the plan and the inventories are currently internal documents as staff continue to develop the program and work through those internal procedures to regularly maintain and update data. However, the inventory data has been used to enhance other reports that have been brought forth to council since the start of the program. So just as an example, the inventory data was used and referenced when compiling figures about public gravel roads in a report that was brought forth about paving petitions in March. And there'll be more opportunities to continue to do that and share findings with inventory data as the program matures. This is just a summary of the GIS layers that were received as part of the roads pilot project, and these numbers are also included in the report, so it shows the known quantities of the assets covered within the scope of the project of around fall of 2023. So as mentioned, staff will be working to continuously verify, update, maintain, and improve these data sets over time. Our asset management program progress and improvement is evaluated annually using the Federation of Canadian Municipalities AM Readiness Scale tool. So this is a tool that was designed by FCM, and it's widely used across Canada for organizations to track their AM progress across 5 major pillars. The Asset Management Staff Committee is actually scheduled to meet next month in June to review the results for this past year and set some short-term goals based on the outcomes. And in addition to the FCM tool, the AM committee and staff continue to look to the objectives laid out in Council's AM policy to ensure the program is moving in the right direction. So specifically in the short term, staff plan to work on improving and adding to data and information obtained from that roads pilot project while directing the major focus area on the water and wastewater services. Staff also plan to continue exploring mobile GIS solutions for asset management and asset data collection. And staff commit to remaining informed and up to date on data management best practices and industry standards, which include developing a data management strategy to ensure sound and reliable inventory data sets are prioritized during these infancy years of the program. So as this was an informational report, there are no recommended motions, but I'll turn it back to the chair if there are any questions. Thank you.
First up, Councilor Mitchell.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a quick. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a quick question through the staff. I know this dealt with the roads, the aquatic center and the sportsplex will be part of the program going forward?
Yes, through the chair, we're taking an approach kind of at one service area at a time. So I mentioned that we looked at roads, we're going to be looking at water and wastewater, and we're hoping that water and wastewater will blend into those more building type assets. We'll look at the treatment plants, and then that will naturally, hopefully, blend into other buildings and facilities. So.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you, Counselor. Is there any further questions? See no further questions. Thank you, Jillian.
Thank you.
Sorry for mispronouncing your name.
No problem.
Next up, we'll have the fire self-insurance. Are you taking that one, Adam?
Sure am, Mr. Chair.
All right.
Be right there.
No worries.
As I pull the report up here, Mr. Chair, I just wanted to, I can start the report by saying back in March, Council received a letter from the East Hants Fire Service requesting that Council review self-insurance for the fire service, and I'll get into that in a moment as I'm just getting a close-up on my screen here. So the report should be on your screen when Shirley is able to flip over. Thank you, Shirley. So as I mentioned back in March, we received a letter on self-insurance and investigating it with the fire service, and Council provided that direction to us. So what we're back here today doing is a preliminary report on this, and I'll go through kind of the report and the next steps of what we're suggesting Council may or may consider to proceed with through a further review. And so self-insurance, well, what does that mean? So we reached out to the fire service and specifically the risk advisor to get a better understanding of what the vision would be. And self-insurance, self-insured retention, SIR as it's listed in the report, is really looking at the fire service insuring themselves up to a certain dollar figure. So for example, if the number is $200,000, if there was any incidents that they needed to access insurance, they would self-insure that up to that aggregate threshold of $200,000, and then the rest of their insurance would kick in above that $200,000 premium. And I'm just throwing out $200,000 as a number here. It's through further investigation, we would look at what that number would be. And when we're talking about insurance, we're not talking about liability insurance. We're specifically talking about building and equipment insurance. Liability would still be separated from this conversation should it proceed. And so any damage, claims for property or equipment or apparatus incurred, they would still need to be documented through an SIR, but that would be done internally within the fire service. So essentially they would need to adjust it themselves. What that looks like at first glance, it could be done by the risk advisor. There would be additional costs, but I think it's important for council to think long term when you're having this conversation today and any future conversations, is what does a self-insurance model look like? Because at the staff level, we don't have the skill set or the resources at times should that risk model with the risk advisor not be able to proceed. You need to help them maintain that service level long term. So that's a really key piece to your conversation. As you move forward with this. Any liability claims would remain covered under traditional insurance, like I mentioned, and then if they, like I said earlier, were to exceed whatever that self-insurance threshold, I threw out the number $200,000, then their regular insurance would kick in through that. So we feel that our next steps with this topic is really to have the fire service together collectively work through a business case on this topic with the risk advisor. They have the skill set to kind of flush out what a business case would look like to really ensure council can make an informed decision on this topic. Staff at our level don't have the resources or, quite frankly, in some areas, the expertise to be making those recommendations. We can review the business case and provide input to the business case, but we really think it should be done by the fire service. And council may choose to fund that business case. I've got a number in the report that if the risk advisor were to do the business case, it's approximately just over $2,000. I've got a more specific number in the report. So part of your conversation today, if you do want to proceed, do you want the fire service to fund that business case themselves, or do you want to provide that funding as a council to the fire service to allow a more informed decision to come forward? And so when you look at all of this collectively, it's not only the cost for self-insurance, and I guess ultimately what I haven't said, I should say, the purpose of this is they're paying a lot of money in premiums. Their annual bill is close to, collectively, is close to $400,000, and when you remove the liability out of that number, you're still speaking of a lot of insurance premiums for the fire service. So what they're hoping to achieve with the self-insured retention is to reduce their overall premium costs, because really the fire service is taking on that risk themselves up to that certain threshold, and then their insurance would kick in over that. So the higher a self-insurance program would theoretically be lower premium costs to the fire service and a reduction in their needs for their operating budget. There are a lot of risks and challenges, and the staff report does outline that, and we've been really specific of what we're looking for in the business case. I mean, today, if council wants to add anything to that conversation with the fire service, please provide that direction to staff. It does outline the key pieces that we're looking for in the business case. And I guess we're looking to council to really think about the next steps, and if you want to continue the conversation and what that looks like. At a staff level, we don't have a self-insured retention program. We have our insurance program, our portfolio. We manage our risks through that, and we manage our portfolio. But with the fire service, they do have large premiums as well, and they're looking to try to save as much money as they can. But this would need to be a collective decision of the fire service. They would need all 13 departments, I would think, to be part of that conversation and to understand that. And then the other piece to the business case is the funding. Is council going to fund that initial $200,000, and how do you fund it? And that's a conversation for a later date. Or are you wanting the fire service to fund that $200,000 up front, and how are they funding it? And there could be an incident the next day after it goes forward, and that $200,000 is depleted immediately. And then how does that get replenished? So there's a lot of layers that need to be pulled back here if council wants to keep that conversation going. I know the chiefs did talk about this in their March meeting, hence the letter coming forward, but I guess we look to council today. I guess the first question is, do you want to continue the conversation with the fire service on this topic? And if so, just knowing that they will be looking at council to fund that as an option, or exploring it, funding themselves. And then if you do want to continue the conversation, how do you want to fund the business case? And like I mentioned in the recommendation here, and I'll just put it up on the screen, the recommended motion, that you can choose to fund the business case, or it can be funded by them. So I'll just turn it back to the chair for any questions.
Thank you, Adam. Yep, there's a few people up to speak. First up, the warden.
Thank you. Well, I find the whole topic, as you said, many layers, and with all the different fire departments within the municipality, I don't know, and I mean, I know we're using $200,000 as an example, but that's not going to go very far. If a fire truck is in an accident and needs replacement or repair, or if there's severe damages to a fire hall, and you're going to be back to your other insurance anyway, and this pot is going to be gone and have to be replenished. And a big question for me, and I think I'm very safe in saying, everyone knows I'm a big supporter of the volunteer fire service. But we have a funding model set up for the volunteer fire service, and out of that funding, they do their insurance and everything. I would not see the municipality setting up a reserve. That's just, off the top of my head right now. If we were going to fund $200,000 or however much more it was, I would rather fund their insurance premiums or assist them with insurance premiums rather than to get into a headache of setting up this self-insurance reserve and administer that or pay someone to administer it. And a little bit of concern, they have an excellent risk management person now, but he's going to retire someday. And we're going to have to, or they, or we, or someone's going to have to find someone else to fill that niche. And so, I don't know, I guess I have more questions than answers right now. And if it came down with what I see right now, if it came down to wanting council to fund this self-insurance reserve, I would rather have a discussion about council assisting with insurance premiums rather than getting into something that sounds to me like it's going to be a whole lot of work. Thank you.
Thank you, Warden. Next up to speak, Councilor Rhino.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, I like the warden, have a lot of questions with regards around this. I guess for me, it would be, I'd have to review all, the assessments and what they're pulling in each department and look and see how much each claim was to see if it was valid. Do they have to go down this route? Because I'm aware of departments, and former Councillor Dixon told me one time, he said, Keith, we have to look for places to spend our money. We're getting so much assessment. So to me, to get down this road and look at this, I have to weigh that against what they're pulling in for an assessment fund and what they're paying out in premiums to see if it would be the proper way to get down that way. And bodes back to what I've always said here for years. To me, there should be a study on the whole fire service of East Hants, because I do believe that the way this model is set up is improper. Not improper. Let me say, it's slanted to the departments who have a bigger assessment base to pull from. Fire service, we have to have the same basics. A life is a life, don't matter. So we should have all the same basics: housing, a few trucks to cover the basics, and then as your population grows, you grow from there. And I don't think the whole of East Hants is set up this way, and I do believe that this needs to be studied at some point. But getting back to the original of your presentation, I would have to know their assessments and what they're paying out to see if it is, is it really that bad that we're paying in insurance premiums? So, thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Rhino. Next up, Councilor McPhee.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My first thoughts when I read this is probably not a good idea, because I know the province does it, but they have a team that looks after it, administers it. We won't have that, or I don't think we're going to want to set up a team to do that. And they're on a much larger basis, and they have a lot more resources to draw from if they have a large claim. Like you said, what do you set up for a reserve? 200,000, 400,000, 500,000, lose one of the trucks like Elmsdale Fire Department has, and you're going to eat up 500,000 very quickly. But it may be a good thing also. I see that Bruce can do up something for, I think it's $2,200, and maybe that's be good money spent just to find out more on this. And as the warden pointed out, I'm just calling Bruce, Mr. Lanchel isn't going to be around forever, and we'd be looking at probably spending a lot of money to replace him and have someone administer this. So I'm fine with going ahead with a study on it to get more information, but my initial thought is that it's probably not a good idea. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Next up, Councillor Tingley.
Well, through the chair, some of the questions I had were answered by what was already stated. I I would have no problem having a look at it to see what this is all about. But I have no idea whether it would be worthwhile going forward with it or not. I'm sure the advisor here could put together something pretty quick. You'd have to consider what the risk and reward is in this situation. You know, if I'm thinking, it sounds like they're probably, the fire department may be putting small claims in now that they could probably just have a higher deductible and mitigate their premiums. I'm not sure, but I'd have no problem with, you know, getting a report like this and just seeing what it's all about. You know, maybe there is some saving, but I can't imagine that there's a huge savings just by listening to the numbers here. That's it.
Thank you, Counselor. I'm going to pass this over to the warden. Kind of along the same lines. A lot of the information and a lot of the questions that Counselor Rhino has are the same questions I have and everybody else. And I guess the business case would give us those numbers, that what we need. And at the end of the day, whether the fire service pays for it or we pay for it, it's all a taxpayer's money. It doesn't matter. It's all coming from the same people. Whether it comes out of the municipality's pocket or the fire hall's pocket, they get all their money from us as well, right, for a lot of the stuff. So it's all the same pot of money, really. I look at it as Councillor Tingley said, like, you know, this was brought forward by them. So obviously there must be, they, as a group, they must see some benefit, possible benefit in this. And without having that business case and understanding what they're seeing, we're kind of not seeing what they're seeing, I believe is what I can say here at this table. And so I think we do need a business case or something like that to give us that information. Because right now, I don't see any other benefit. But I like Councillor Rhino and others say and Councillor McPhee, there's parts of it that, you know, we don't have the numbers to understand why they sent us this recommendation. Thank you. Okay. Go ahead, Warden.
I'm just wondering, I believe this came forward from the Chiefs Association, is that correct?
Through you, Mr. Chair, correct.
So I don't know if it's something that's, maybe none of the firemen here know either. Is this something that's a hot topic around the various fire departments, or do we know that?
Through you, Madam Warden, I can't speak for all of the departments, but what I heard in that conversation and through my day-to-day role with the chiefs, just talking to them, and I think it speaks to a little bit of what I've heard from some of the councillors today is there's various budgets, operating budgets, as we know, and various revenues, tax levies coming in for each department. And for some of the departments, their insurance costs are a significant portion of their budget. And so it's kind of... it's creeping up that it's to a point where the bulk of, I don't know if bulk's the right word, a significant portion of their operating budget is their insurance. So then they also need the rest of the remaining operating budget to help with that. So they could look at maybe increasing their deductible costs as well to help as an initial. But then when they increase it to X dollars, then some of the departments may not even, it'll be more challenging for them to afford that deductible level as well. And they haven't had that conversation that I'm aware of for the deductibles, but I do think it's something they need to explore as well because their deductible is really low right now. So they're all kind of accessing it when they need it. But I guess my general statement to that, Warden, they're feeling the pressures of the financial impacts of insurance, just like we are as a municipality. You saw in your operating budget, insurance is going up significantly. So I would say some of them feel it a lot larger, more greater than others feel it. And so that's why collectively they brought it forward to asking if we could investigate it to help really reduce their financial pressures.
Well, I guess I'm still not seeing in the big picture how it's going to help. Because, and I'm working on an assumption here that council's not going to invest another $200,000 to $500,000 grant or whatever. But however the initial fund got set up, when that's wiped out, or as it gets spent, it has to be replaced. And how's it going to be replaced? So however the initial fund was set up, supposing council did have funding and set the initial one up, someone has an accident, causes $200,000 worth of damage to the fire truck, it cleans the fund out to fix that, then that money has to be replaced. And it would have to be replaced by the fire service. So any savings they made on insurance premiums, I would think, just being a layperson, would be very quickly eaten up as soon as there was one major claim against that fund. Now, we might get lucky and we might go and there might not be a lot of claims, or we might not. We might have 1 claim, 2 claim, 5 claims within a short period of time. And, you know, 1 claim, it has to be reimbursed. There's nothing to say there won't be another claim in a month or 2 months or a week or whatever, and you could be constantly funding this. So that's just my concern. I understand the want to save on the insurance premiums, but just the idea that whatever this bucket of money is, and I'm just saying somewhere between $200,000 and $500,000, it has to be topped up constantly as it's used. And if it's a huge loss, it could be a huge bill for the fire departments. And I don't know where, if they had even a $200,000, $250,000 use of a self-insurance fund, I'm not sure where many of them would access the funds to pay whatever their share was to fill it back up for the next time. So anyway, that's my concern. If council decides to go ahead with the study, well, so be it. But I guess my personal opinion right at this point is I'm still not sold on the value of it. And if the fire departments, if the fire service is struggling with paying insurance costs, then that's something that should be brought to council and we could have a discussion on that. But I'm just not sold on this yet. Thank you.
Thank you, Warden. Everything just lit back up again. Counselor Mitchell.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to staff. During the discussions, was there any idea what the deductibles might be on a department? What their deductible would be?
Through you, Mr. Chair, current deductibles or future deductible?
Their deductibles right now?
Yeah, their current deductible is $2,500 collectively, like each claim per claim.
Okay.
Yeah, and I guess I would just add on to that around, oh, sorry, I'll just pause there and listen to any further questions.
Okay, you keep going.
I do think if council chooses with the business case, it would help to understand the financial pieces. If there are savings, maybe the savings aren't seen to the taxpayers for 10 years because they use the savings and put those. But those are all unknowns until if you choose to take that step, and there may not be. But it could be the next day after you do it, you could be depleting it, or it might not be for a year or two, right? It's just that's the risks associated with it.
So the deductible covers all 13 departments, the 2,500?
Correct. They are through you, Mr. Chair. They are insured independently, but it's looked at collectively.
Okay, I'll discuss it more with Chief Goodman.
Thank you, Counselor. Next up, Counselor Tingley.
Through the chair, I think a lot of the warden's concerns are accurate, but I still think it would be worthwhile maybe looking at the business case. I'm not a risk manager, but I worked in the insurance business all my life. I never seen too many organizations of this size that did have a self-insured retention. Most of the clients that I seen were large national corporations that multi-million, hundreds of millions of dollars a business a year, provincial governments, that sort of thing. One thing that strikes me is this issue on the deductible, a $2,500 deductible, and we've got a risk advisor. Has any discussions been had with the broker yet as to what you can do to mitigate your expenses? But having said that, I'd be open to, if the rest of the council is, to just see what kind of a plan the advisor would propose.
Is that it, Counselor?
That's it.
I guess kind of following up on Councilor Tingley there on the 2,500 deductible, that seems somewhere a bit low. Couldn't they, you know, it would be my thought that if they raised that deductible to a higher amount, they'd have substantial savings there because, you know, people, with their personal insurance have done that and seen some type of savings. So that would be a question, but also, 200,000, come on. I think a minimum balance to keep in something like that, if you were self-insured, would at least be the minimum of $1 million. I mean, like the warden said, you could wipe something out and have to replenish and replenish and replenish. So I don't think that's a realistic amount to have in a pot. So those are just my thoughts.
Thank you, Counselor. Counselor Garden Cole.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to staff. Pardon my questioning that maybe this has already been discussed, but the East Hants Fire Service, it says, would like to investigate self-insurance. Can you just elaborate on how this came about?
Through you, Mr. Chair. So the East Hants Fire Services counsels 13 independent fire departments. So
Right.
they're independent and they operate independently, collectively together. They refer to themselves as the East Hants Fire Service Association, and they have an association of bylaws set up to that effect. The chiefs meet quarterly to discuss areas of mutual topic. Myself as liaison attend the quarterly meetings, and based on the conversations with council or conversations then we bring forward. So recent example would be the training facility out in Knoll. That was something that came up in the meeting. And we brought it forward and council made a decision on that and provided some funding. So collectively, it came up through the chiefs. We're actually in the annual renewal cycle right now, and that deductible may have gone up by not even their choice or their request. I haven't seen it yet, but like this month we're in the renewal process.
Okay.
So they could choose to increase it down the road, or in some cases, as we've seen in the past, people that are being insured don't have a choice. Their deductibles just go up to maintain that certain insurance value. Does that answer your question about the Fire
Yeah,
Service
it does.
Association?
I guess basically what I was wondering is if this is coming from all 13 of, you know, it was a general consensus from all 13 fire departments that they wanted to investigate this. And yes, that answered my question.
And through you, Mr. Chair, just elaborate on process. They bring forward and they vote on things collectively, and it typically is consensus-based.
Right.
And so as a part of the motion that they made at their association meeting, the motion was to write council a letter. So that's how you typically will see things come forward, is through the association.
Okay.
And typically in the past, I'll just put this now, if council moves things, they want to see, a lot of the times it's 2/3 of the vote of the chiefs in favor of it, not everything collectively they may agree on, but council really wants to see that collective agreement typically in your past decision making.
Okay, I just want a clarification on exactly who it is who's looking for this. Thank you.
Counselor Hitt.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think there's a lot of questions out there, and I think a lot of them questions maybe we have answered in our own minds, but I think there's a lot of details maybe that's not there that probably we should have, and I think it would be important to have them do a business case. And I would be prepared to make the motion, but I think that's something that we maybe should fund. I think you said roughly about $2,000.
I think, through you, Mr. Chair, $2,250. I think if you put $2,500 in your possible motion, that would cover it.
Yeah. Just not how you want to word that in, but I'm prepared to make that motion with the payment to be paid by the municipality up to $2,500.
Moved and seconded. On before the motion, Counselor Musa.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So Adam, as of now, if the fire department have an accident and they know the cost is gonna be like $5,000, and probably their deductible is $2,500, and probably their insurance is gonna go up by, if they claim it, they're gonna go up like by $5,000 or $10,000 or something like that. So do they have the power to not use their insurance and pay for it from their levy now, or is that something that we could explore in that study too? Like I know if I had an accident And I know if I claim it, my insurance is gonna go up, and I'm gonna up every year, like, it's not gonna go up for 1 year.
Yeah.
So I'd rather fix it from my own pocket instead of, so do they have the power to do that? Anything you know about that, or?
Yeah, through you, Mr. Chair. There have been only a handful of small losses, I would say, in the last few years, and that could be included in a supplemental report as their loss ratio history. But typically, the last few that have come in have been minor damages, I would just say, to buildings, and they're in that $10,000 range, so they have been claiming them. I guess to answer your question directly, they could fund it themselves and not use it. However, it's in place, so they have, what I've seen in the last few years, they have been utilizing it, even if it's a small claim, they have been utilizing it. It may absolutely impact, as their loss ratio goes up, impact their premium costs.
Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Rhino to the motion.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Where would this source of funding come from for this $2,200?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I think we would put it under council's fire expense, and through your motion, we would do the BOE process, which council would see in a supplemental quarterly report. So it would be your fire expense budget is tight, so it would come from the general tax rate.
So the fire budget is tight?
Let me elaborate on that. Your fire budget is pretty accurate. There's no room in there to fund things that aren't budgeted in there. So this would be funded through the general tax rate, and it would show up to you in your quarterly BOE process if council were to approve this motion.
Well, hearing that, I just can't support this motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Warden Rolston.
Yes, thank you. If this motion were to pass, the intent would be to sole source this study to the existing risk management person, correct?
Through you, yes, correct. And the value would allow us, under your procurement guidelines, allow us to do that. I think we would want that individual a part of the conversation because of the knowledge of the fire service. And I'll just leave it at that. It could be done externally, but I think your cost would be different, and your approach probably would be different as well.
It just becomes a little difficult because you're going to sole source the contract to the current risk management person, who will be the person who will manage it should we decide to do it, and it's and he's very good at what he does, but it's a sole sourcing to the person who's going to run the program should we decide to put a program in place.
Through you, Madam Mayor, I would like to elaborate. That is a possibility. However, I think part of supplemental reports would be looking at additional ways, not just through the risk advisor. Could be done through, they could bring on an adjuster, administrative pieces to administrate the program as well. It is all likelihood, that is a possible scenario that you're mentioning there, but there could be other scenarios that could be brought forward as part of additional information.
Well, my fire department may string me up when they explain it better to me, but you don't have me. Sorry. Thank you.
Councillor Tingley, towards the motion.
To the chair, maybe I should have declared this before, but I know this advisor, and I think I am in a bit of a conflicty vote here. So I don't think I should be voting. So we're talking about a sole service and all, like, as I'm listening to this conversation, I don't know if I should be voting on this. I feel there is a conflict. I'm not very comfortable with it. Because I know him. I got some thoughts and ideas about this, but I just think it would be, I don't think I should be voting on it.
Okay, if you want to declare a conflict of interest.
That's what I do.
You can sign the book, take the seat in the gallery.
What's that?
Just wait for Shirley to get back. Go ahead, Councillor Rana.
I'm a little confused with Councillor Tingley. Conflict of interest. If you're talking about Mr. Bruce Langell, I know Bruce and have been known Bruce for years, so it would not, that conflict, because we knew him through, and I think Councillor McPhee is in the same boat as I do, that we knew him through risk management through the province. So that, does that put us in a conflict of interest?
Many of us know through working for fire service.
CAO's gonna try to answer, I guess.
Through you, Mr. Chair, each individual counselor needs to understand the relationship that they have with whatever topic is being discussed and make their decision whether there's a conflict or not. That will depend on how you know people in the community. It will depend on what relationship you have with them financially, who does business with who. There's all sorts of reasons why someone may find themselves in conflict, and only that person can decide if they have a conflict or not. So by just knowing somebody, I would agree. I wouldn't declare a conflict for just knowing somebody, but I don't know what relationships you have, business, social, or otherwise, with individuals. So if a counselor wants to declare a conflict for reasons under the Act, then they can do that.
Thank you, CAO. So the motion's on the floor. Question's been called. We'll go to the vote. And the votes are in, and it is passed by a vote of 6-4 with myself, Councillor Musa, Councillor Rhino, and Warden Rolston voting nay. All right, moving on to the next item. Thank you, Adam. Next item will be the Uniac Business Park crime. Graham, you taking that one? And somebody could poke their head out and tell Councillor Tingley he can come back. He didn't have to leave the room.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, and through you, Mr. Chair, good morning, councillors. So I'm here today with a report that was requested by council on a summary of the meeting that was held with the Uniac Business Park, both tenants and business owners, back in March. So just as a bit of background, during the last 2 years, our divisions received a number of reports of crime in the business parks, both in Uniac and in Elmsdale. And we know anecdotally from speaking to business owners that there are more than what's being reported to our division in terms of incidents that are happening. So back in October, our division put forward an information report for council highlighting the crime stats that the RCMP was able to pull at the time. And over the last 2 years, the RCMP have responded to 24 incidences of crime in the Elmsdale Business Park and 20 incidences in the Uniac Business Park. And those are ones that were reported directly to the RCMP or as a request for service from the RCMP. So in March, we did hold a meeting with the business park owners, the business park owners and tenants at their request, and in attendance were the local area councillors as well as RCMP representatives, both Sergeant McRae and some patrol officers. During the course of that meeting, the RCMP highlighted that crime prevention is really one of the best and biggest things that the local business owners can do to protect their own property. They highlighted and touched on council's new 24-hour policing model and the zone policing and how that would potentially help with crime prevention in the business parks. But they did share that a big part of crime prevention is the business owners themselves taking action. And they talked about things like on-site lighting and cameras that the business owners could potentially install and use in helping to prevent the crime. They did share as well that security personnel are an option, and that I guess overall all of the things that they can do both in crime prevention from the RCMP and in crime prevention from the business owners will help to reduce potentially the number of incidences, but it won't necessarily eliminate them. There will always be crime in some fashion. As well, during the course of the meeting, one of the big focus areas was the idea of security personnel for the business parks, and this is something that the businesses and tenants really stressed in the meeting. They are looking at the options for on-site security personnel. Well, during the meeting, we did discuss a number of different options, both mobile patrols, which is where security personnel would regularly visit the park over the course of an evening or overnight. And another option that was tossed around was the idea of gating the business parks that came from the business park owners. But really a big focus was this idea of on-site after-hours security personnel. So our division has looked at that and spoken to some security companies at a high level. And to have a individual there after hours, 365 days a year, the cost would be somewhere in the range of $100,000 to $125,000 annually per business park. So that would be double basically for council's 2 business parks. I should note too that some of the businesses did raise that they felt that East Hants could hire a individual as an employee to provide security measures in the park, and that's one option that they felt strongly about. Our division did complete a jurisdictional scan and spoke to some of our colleagues in other municipalities as well as some of the business and industrial parks. And it should be noted, I think, that none of the other parks that were surveyed do offer a on-site security, both or either contracted or employed. And I guess just as another additional piece, this isn't the first time these concerns have been raised. Back in 2015, the Council of the Day did explore an option for an area rate in the Elmsdale Business Park to provide security service. But at the time, a petition vote of the businesses didn't get the majority of support that was needed to carry that forward. The second half of the meeting with the business park owners really dealt with concerns they had around infrastructure and municipal service levels in the business parks. And so our division for this summary report has worked with the infrastructure and operations team to provide some context and some further information around these concerns. So really the concerns that were raised around infrastructure and municipal service levels focused on streetlights, overgrown ditches, and specifically the Highway 1 intersections at both James Boyle Drive and Richard John Drive in the Uniacke Business Park. So in terms of streetlights, there was an issue raised to East Hants back in October of 2023 that a number of streetlights were out in the business park. The Roads and Streets team at the time investigated and discovered that 16 lights needed to be replaced. Those lights were then subsequently replaced in February of 2024. The other piece that was a big focus was the truck turning at the Highway 1 intersection with James Boyle Drive. This intersection, Roads and Streets has reviewed and does fall within the provincial right-of-way. And they feel that there is further study required to understand both the limitations and traffic requirements that are taking place at that intersection. And so their infrastructure and operations is looking at completing this study in 2024. The other part of the Highway 1 intersection concerns that were raised dealt with specifically a cross culvert that runs under James Boyle Drive and the erosion of the shoulder that takes place there that has an impact on the traffic. So Roads and Streets, when this concern was raised back in back in 2023, Roads and Streets reviewed it and discovered that what they think are deficiencies with the design and construction of the cross culvert. They did complete a temporary repair and filled in the erosion that was taking place in July of 2023. And then again, subsequently, after the large rainstorm flooding event in July, they went back and completed additional repairs to that cross culvert, to the erosion that's taking place at the cross culvert. And overall, I think what we took away from the meeting was the timeline associated with some of these repairs and maintenance within the park. And infrastructures and operations have reviewed that and feel that staffing levels at the time played a role in some delayed responses, but they feel they've made significant improvements since then. Our division also completed some follow-up visits to the businesses that did attend the meeting, and we had some discussions around if there had been additional incidences of crime and how they viewed the business park operations. And mostly, overall, they felt that while there hadn't been additional crime since the meeting, that they felt there would be additional crime at some point, that this problem wasn't going to go away. Overall, however, the sentiment that we received was that most of the businesses are quite happy with the level of service, the operations of the business park itself. So, in terms of the on-site security service, this is something that if council wished to explore further, we could produce a report that outlined a business case proposal for this type of service in the business park. And that report would look at service models, costing, and funding mechanisms for council's consideration. I'm just going to flip back up and give you the recommendation before we go over the alternatives. But at this point, we're recommending to council to that Corporate and Residential Services Committee recommends to council to continue with the priority for crime prevention over the next year and priority patrols by the RCMP within the business parks, which is something that we've spoken to the RCMP about, and they feel they are doing under council's current priorities. And that additionally, crime statistics specific to the three business parks in East Hants be included in the RCMP quarterly report for council's consideration. So they would break those statistics out for council within their quarterly report. And then as alternatives, the Corporate and Residential Services Committee, due to the discussions around infrastructure, could recommend to council that infrastructure and operations prepare a report on the current issues and level of service in the business parks. And that would be to look at these concerns that were raised, as well as the rest of the current infrastructure in the parks. In terms of the security service that we spoke about, Corporate and Residential Services Committee could recommend to council to request a report outlining that business case. That was loud. Where we would look at the funding mechanisms, the models that are available, and the costs of those. And then, as always, council could provide additional direction to staff. And with that, I'll turn it back over to you, Mr. Chair, and be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you for that report, Graham. First up, Councillor Musa.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So now, as a municipality, what kind of services, like other than the roads, we provide for those parks, like fixing the roads and stuff? So I know they pay for the lighting, like it's on their tax bill, and what else we provide?
Through you, Mr. Chair, do you mean specifically in regards to infrastructure?
Like whatever, like they're paying taxes, like 3.5%, whatever. So what kind of service they get for that?
Through you, Mr. Chair, if it's specific to infrastructure, I might turn that over to the Director of Infrastructure and Operations. But overall, the businesses receive all the same services that businesses throughout the municipality receive. So that includes the economic and business development services. So we provide direct support to those businesses through Council's business support service. So last year we worked with 77 businesses within the municipality on issues and concerns. In terms of the specifics of the infrastructure, I believe they receive street lighting as well as they do, what's that? Yeah, roads and streets, and then the ditches as well, I believe, and the driveway and access as well. Garbage,
No,
snow removal.
they don't get garbage pickup.
Yeah, they receive garbage pickup.
Oh, yeah, it's just
Yes,
like,
they do.
but
And
most-
recycling, yeah.
But it's limited, right? Like same as a household, or?
No, it would be the same levels as all the businesses receive, which is an increased limit above the residential.
Oh, okay. So, I think we should go again to the businesses and see if they'll be willing to put something on their tax rate for security that the municipality will run, because I don't think they want somebody to run that security like same as we do like administration for the private roads. So if we could do that as administration for them, for maybe they'll be happy to do it, because I know one theft, it's gonna cost you more than the whole year for because if they lost $10,000 and they don't want to claim it, so that $10,000 per business could cover that $125,000 a year for security, right?
Through you, Mr. Chair, if council wanted to look at that, I think we would suggest that the business case proposal would likely be able to answer those types of questions.
Okay. Thank you.
Next up, Warden Rolston.
Yes, thank you. As I understand that crime prevention and incidents of crimes in the business parks are certainly cause for concern, but any business owner anywhere within the municipality would tell you the same thing, whether it be in a shopping mall, whether it be a private standalone business or whatever. And it's very difficult to figure out how to address it. I would still see that if it was to be over and above the services that other businesses are getting in the municipalities, then it would have to be something that was funded by the businesses who were benefiting from it. That's just my thoughts on it, because we have a lot of very valuable businesses throughout the municipality, and I think all at one time or another have faced issues even in the rural area of theft and other crimes. So I guess the jury's out for me. If it was decided to look at security for the business parks, then I would still be of the mind that it would be something that would have to go on some type of area rate or something to cover the costs for that. Thank you.
Thank you, Warden. I'm going to pass the chair over to you. Yeah, during that meeting, because I was there at that meeting, there was talk of them forming a business association. Has there been any more feedback from the group of businesses that were there about forming a business association there to address things within the park?
Through you, Mr. Chair, we've received correspondence with 4 or 5 businesses CC'd on it, but there's been no further movement that we know of towards that business park association, no.
Okay.
And staff have offered to provide assistance in doing that, but so far there's been no uptake on it.
Okay. And another thing, one of the major concerns for a lot of the, I'll call them residents of the business park, was the intersection with Highway 1 and the turning radius and the safety issue with their business vehicles entering Highway 1. That span of entering Highway 1 was too narrow. It doesn't allow them, in order for their vehicles to enter or exit, they're taking up both lanes on Highway 1 to enter or exit due to the, I want to say, angle or short angle of those entrances. to the point where, if they try and stay in the one lane, all of their trucks are going to end up in the ditch because there's not enough room to make a turn. So I was wondering, is that currently being addressed and looked at? Because it just seems like that, and those entrances and exits to service the type of clients that the park was designed for requires a larger and wider entrance and exit.
Through you, Mr. Chair, again, the intersection with the Highway 1 and James Boyle Drive is currently slated to be looked at by the Department of Infrastructure and Operations in coordination with Department of Public Works. Where it's a Public Works right-of-way, there'll need to be considerations around working together on that, I think is the way that Infrastructures and Operations phrased it. But there is a report that they're looking at completing around that intersection specifically and the concerns that have been raised.
Jesse has something to say.
Do you have anything further on that?
Okay. Cool. Through Madam Morton, I believe.
Yes.
Chair. So specifically, what's going to be looked at is the turning radius. You can do a tabletop measurement, and so the width in the intersection would have been set up and designed based on the information available the day, and the usage of businesses that have gone in can vary from the previous plan. And so the look at what's being used now and what the width of the roadway and the intersection can be is going to be looked at. And I would suggest that where this will come up is discussions into fall capital with a potential proposed capital project, because that will be the ultimate outcome. The widening of the road, it's a tight, narrow area. I can project that out already. I can tell you that that's going to be the discussion, and it's going to be a capital discussion, and it's going to be a big decision to make. But that initial work is going to be happening this year. So the team's already started it. They've briefed me on some conversations already. So it's very much on the operational radar.
Okay, good. Because the standard delivery trailer for most business parks is a 53-foot trailer, and you can't. It's impeding public safety. That's the biggest concern, not only coming from residents, but also coming from the business owners, because they feel for their employees making those turns and coming out, especially with the speeds of the vehicles traveling through there. So that was a good concern. If I just go down to the alternatives for a second. So hearing that is already being looked at, I don't feel the need to make an alternative motion at this time. But when we talked about security in the business parks and things like that, the reason I asked about the Business Park Association is because they were looking at doing something internally and coming back with a plan to the municipality saying, this is our idea, this is our plan, this is how we plan on funding it. Because the businesses at the time were very open to paying a little extra levy because they wanted a certain service. So I don't see us leading the charge on this. I see it being something that has to be done together. And so until they get together and come back as a group in the future, and I do believe whatever happens out of that business park will have to be replicated here, because I do believe they both have the same concerns. Because I do know there were some of the businesses that were there that moved to East Hants out of other business parks, were very vocal and said, I was in a larger urban area and I did not have this much theft in that area. I'm experiencing more theft here than in a larger urban area. So that was a concern for them, and they were thinking of moving back. So we don't want to get that reputation, and I don't think we have that reputation, but I believe if we don't take positive steps that we could end up there. That's all I have for now. Thank you.
I'll turn the chair back over to you.
Thank you. Councillor Rhino.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Chair. Just during these discussions, has it ever been determined through investigation whether this crime that's taking place is organized or virtually random.
Through you, Mr. Chair, the RCMP didn't share any details around that or sort of the subsequent actions that were taken. I know there were some reports in the news recently or around the time that we were having these meetings that the RCMP had made some arrests in relating to some incidences in the business park, but that was as much information as we received from them.
So then there has been a few arrests with regard to crimes in that business park?
I believe there was one that was released publicly, yes.
So basically from that, did it seem to be an organized or random? Like I'm trying to get at, is this a societal crime where with the way of cost of living and everything, or is this an organized that's going to be targeted no matter what the cost of living is?
I wouldn't. I'm not. I'm not an RCMP officer, but from my experience in the business parks, through you, Mr. Chair, I would think that these are related to the fact that these are businesses and there are, various types of products and vehicles and things that are located on those premises that would be driving these. As to whether it's organized crime or not, I couldn't say for sure.
Okay. Well, I'm of two minds, really. We try to entice businesses to come to our business parks, which helps with our tax rate and so on. So in one side of my head, maybe we should be a little bit responsible for some type of security. Then on the other side, how can we put security in parks and not protect other, put security around other businesses out there? So, when I get down to it, I think, maybe the RCMP is the way to go. And Councillor Perry's brought up, has there been any discussion around associations and so forth around that area? So that may be a topic of discussion. So, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Rhino. Councillor Green.
I'll move the recommended motion.
Moved and seconded. On before the motion, Councillor Musa.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, I work in that business park and I hear a lot from the owners. And to answer Councillor Rhino, I think the thieves are very smart. They know that this business park is not at least 30 minutes away from the RCMP. And they know they can go in. And I know a couple years ago, or in the last couple years, only one company got hit with 10 catalytic converters, taken off. So I don't know if you call that organized, but I call that it's those businesses are vulnerable for thieves, for theft, because there is the thief know that nothing can stop him. There's nobody. If somebody caught him and called the RCMP, it's going to be 40 minutes. We already talked about this in the morning, and we're talking about other businesses. I know, but other businesses, they have some support. Even the business park here in Elmsdale is probably 5 minutes away from the RCMP. But the Uniac Business Park, it's a good tax support for our tax. And if we do something, I don't think it's a big thing to do, to support those businesses and to have a good name for our business park, just in case we expand the other one or found another land to do it. So I think the report will say everything, and hopefully we can get something to support them. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Musa. Councillor Garden Cole to the motion.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I do see a difference between businesses that are in a business park and those that are not, just because they're all together, and I think that lends itself to more crime and theft. So I do think that they are kind of in a different scenario than your average businesses. And I think security may be the way that they're going to have to go, although not all businesses may be on board, because some businesses are much more likely to be the victims of theft than others in the business parks, just because of the nature of their business or what they have on their property. I think that maybe security is the way to go, but as Councillor Perry said, I think that they need to get this together or decide what they want to do as a group and proceed from there, and then maybe we can be involved in it at some level. But I think that's what I would be waiting for myself. Thank you.
Thank you. And I'm just going to turn it over to the warden to make one comment towards the motion. I believe that having the RCMP report to council on what's in this motion as it becomes part of the quarterly report, crime in the business parks or calls for service in the business parks, I think that will give council a lot better picture of what's happening and where it's happening. I know with Mount Uniacke, a lot of it, I mean, the zone policing's only been in place for less than 3 months now. So we do have 24-hour, we do have zone policing. So a lot of the crimes over the last number of years, we don't know how much more, how many more increased patrols are there in the areas, things like that. So I think having it come in the report will definitely show that, maybe the effects of that. But also, I think by putting it in the report, it also makes it a priority that the RCP should be in these areas as well. I know the RCP know they need to be there, and I'll support the motion. Thank you.
Is there any further discussion to the motion? Question's been called. The motion is passed unanimously. Back to you, Councillor Perry. We are at past time of...
We're at the past the time of adjournment. There is one report left. We could put this to the end of the day this afternoon, reconvene. All those in favor? Aye. Contrary mind? Okay, we will move item 26 to the end of the day. We'll be looking for an adjournment of lunch to reconvene in Planning and Advisory Committee at 1:30. Moved and seconded. All those in favor? Aye. We are adjourned.